Welcome back. Parshas Mishpatim. Parsha that at the first glimpse seems to be a parsha filled with dinim and halachos, the laws that one might think are based on logic, or that maybe one might even think that this is something that is similar to what we find in today's Western society, where there's simple laws and bylaws that govern the way people do business, the way people live. And what's even more interesting is that we see in the first Rashi of this parsha, Ve'ela Mishpatim, Rashi says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu, don't think that you could give Klal Yisrael the Torah by telling them once, twice, or even 3 times, but rather you have to put it down for them like a Shulchan Aruch, like a prepared table, put down with its details. And even Rashi says the word v'tameyem, the reasons for the mitzvahs. Something that might push someone to think that the way we live and the way we should be based on what we understand and the reasoning that we see or feel. The son-in-law of the Nevadik, the Mashgiach, once said, Ve'ela Mishpatim starts right after the end of Parshas Yisroi. The end of Parshas Yisroi, the Torah tells us the mitzvah of the Kruvim, the 2 Kruvim that were put in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And Rashi expands on the halachos of the Kruvim, that if they were done right, 2 gold Kruvim in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it is a mitzvah's esed d'oraisa. But if it was done with silver, or if it was done with 3 Kruvim, or it's done outside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it would be considered avodah zarah. Incredible. A mitzvah that no one would even try to understand. And he said that the reason Mishpatim is immediately after this mitzvah is to show us that all these Mishpatim brought to us in this parsha and in the entire Torah, we must look at them just as we look at the mitzvah of Kruvim. Not for 1 second think that we do these mitzvahs because we understand them. As the Shloah HaKodesh said, if one would live 1,000 years, he would not start to fathom the reasoning behind the mitzvah. As the Hilei Tanya said, that the mitzvahs are so deep into the Chamishim Shari Bina, we can't even start to even comprehend one mitzvah. And as all of the Rishonim and the Achronim, and as the Maharal explores this incredibly, how far we are from understanding even what to us might seem the simplest mitzvahs. And as the Chasam Sofer would say, every single mitzvah we do, even when Chazal do give us somewhat of an understanding that we might think we understand, we do it b'mitzvahs hamelech because the king has told us to do so. And of course, we have to understand how these 2 ideas work together. On the one hand, Rashi HaKodesh tells us Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to teach us Tamei HaMitzvahs. On the other hand, the clarity that the Nefesh HaChaim gives us, that even Moshe Rabbeinu Kaviyachol was not given all the Tamei HaMitzvahs. Reb Yankele Galinsky tells us, one time in yeshiva in Chadera, a fellow arrived, an IT technician. He was very knowledgeable, and he said that he wants to have a little bit of a vikuach, a little bit of an argument about the Torah and its halachas. And Reb Yankele asked him, I don't think that's going to be possible. I don't think we can have an argument. And he said, why not? I think we can have an argument. I think I have the tools. I think I have the knowledge. We can do this. So Reb Yankele asked him, I'll explain it to you. Let me ask you. You are a technician, right? What would you say if I tell you that I think we can have an argument about how you should do your work? You see, I know some of the basics. And the technician said, well, listen, you might have read some of the basics in a book one time, but that's not the real thing. You can't know some names of wires or some names of books and then think that you can have an argument about the interesting and intricate details that are involved in my work. So Reb Yankele told him, so let me ask you, what is your connection to the Torah? You have some, some topics, Chagim, some of the Yom Tovim, Purim, Pesach, he had drunk, he had some matzahs. And the fellow, he apparently still didn't get it. And he's like, yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So he told him, no. You see, you think you know what Pesach is. You think you know what Purim is. But you're not even touching the top of the spear. You see, when a person starts thinking that they understand the logic behind the mitzvah, that kaviyachal they understand the reasoning behind the mitzvah, what ends up happening is that we start doing these mitzvahs because we feel like it. And Rahman and Litzlan, if we don't feel like it, we know where that ends up. Someone once came to Reb Yankele and asked him if we can make some type of deal b'negiah to Hilchos Shabbos. And Reb Yankele told him, I'll tell you what the Malbim said. Someone once came to the Malbim and asked him if he can do, he'll smoke, but with a shinoi. Maybe we can do some type of a deal. Everyone was smoking in those days. He'll do it with a shinoi. And the Malbim said, no problem. You can do it with a shinoi if you put the fire end in your mouth. There is no psharas. You see, as soon as we start thinking that we can reason with the Torah, that we can reason with the mitzvahs, that it depends on how we feel about things, everything falls apart. All we are here to do is, as the Chasam Sofer clearly said, mitzvahs hamelech. But we do still have to understand the Rashi that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to teach us Tamei HaMitzvahs. But of course, it is so clear. You see, we are supposed to learn Tamei HaMitzvahs also because of mitzvahs hamelech. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us in the Torah to learn Tamei HaMitzvahs. And for that reason only, we must learn whatever we could in trying to understand the mitzvahs. But when it comes to do the mitzvahs, that we only do because mitzvahs hamelech. Kof aleim har kigigis, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought the mountain down. Why? Even though Klal Yisrael was willing to do it, they understood. They reached the Nun Sharei Bina. They reached such a high level of Kedusha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, that's not how you perform the mitzvahs. You don't do it with understanding. You do it with Kafa Aleim Har Kigigis. And that, of course, is why in this week's Parsha, we get to Naaseh v'Nishma. First, Klal Yisrael agreed to do mitzvahs hamelech. And part of mitzvahs hamelech is Nishma, is to learn the Torah, to understand its mitzvahs. But of course, that is not why we do mitzvahs. We do mitzvahs hamelech because that's what we're supposed to do. And as long as we remember this, we will be able to go forward and to fulfill our obligations. And when Mashiach comes, b'mehera b'yameinu, be able to say that we fulfilled Naaseh v'Nishma. Thank you for joining me wherever you are. Have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos.